Hello friends, hope you all are fine. Up to now we have created our API endpoints, but they work with dummy data. They return dummy data because we didn't create our database properly. So in this video I'm going to complete that task. So let's begin. First of all, we need to complete our task entity class. So this class is going to represent our database table. First we need to tell Spring Boot that this is our database table representation. To tell this, we have to use this at entity annotation. So now Spring Boot recognizes this as a database table. So in this class, we should have our primary key. So we are using integer id as our primary key. Again, we have to tell Spring Boot that this is our primary key. To do that, we have to use another annotation called id, and I'm going to mark this as auto generated id because we don't need to give external id every time. So let's mark it as generated value. There is an annotation called generated value. Okay, now what else, what we need in our database column? So second one is I'm using private string task. So this is actual task, and then we need to have a boolean variable to check whether this task is completed or not. And let's add another variable to record our created time. So I'm creating another variable at like this, and probably we need to mark we need to add due date, but when we design our user interface I didn't add a place to add that, so I am going to ignore that one. And then we need to create getters and setters. Okay, now our entity class is ready. And then there's important configuration. So we have to add this configuration into properties file. This is the configuration: spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl-auto equals to create. Okay, by adding that we can ask Spring Boot to generate our database schema. So I'm going to connect our database. So yeah, this is our to-do-db. Currently it doesn't have any tables, and now I'm going to run this application. Okay, let's check out our database whether it has our table. Okay, as you can see, there's a task table, and it has following columns: id, created at, done, and task. So our table is ready. You may wonder what is this Hibernate sequence table. It's because we marked our primary key as a generated value, so that is related to that one. Okay, now we have our entity class and database ready, and then we need to use that in this controller class. And what we need to do is we have to create a repository class. Actually we need to create an interface, so I'm going to create it in a package called repositories, and the name is task repository. Okay, then we need to extend it to JPA repository, and we need to provide our entity class its primary key type. Our type is integer. Okay, we need to import this one. Okay, now it's ready. We don't have to do anything else. With this we can get all the basic functionalities like insert and retrieve and update, delete, like that. And then what we need to do is we need to create task repository variable in our controller class and mark it as auto wired. So Spring Boot will inject a constructed object into this variable. It will be available within this API endpoint functions. Let's implement those functions now. First one is create task. Actually we are already getting our task object. What we need to do is we just need to save it into our database. We have a function called save for that, and I am passing our task object. Okay, now we need to return all the details in our database. So we need to query our table to get all the records. So there is a function called get all task in repository class. So let's call it, sorry, find all. The function name is find all. Okay, now the create task is complete. So let's test it with Postman. I'm going to restart our server, and we need Postman also. Also, let's check with the database. Currently, it doesn't have any values. Sorry, in task table, currently it doesn't have any data. Okay, our server is ready. Let's wait for Postman. Okay, let's check our server is working. Okay, get function is working, but we didn't change it yet. What we did was we did implement our create task function. So it is post request, and what we need to do is we have to add this body. So we have to write our JSON object. Okay, what we need to do is we need to create a JSON object to represent all these properties in this task entity class. So because this ID is generated one, we don't need it, but we have to provide these variables, task, done, and created at. Okay, let's do that. First one is task. I'm going to add this is test task, and second variable is done. This is not yet completed, so it's false, and other one is created at. So this is actually a created time. So 2020 10 18, okay, 12, let's say 12. Okay, let's try to create this task. Okay, something is wrong. Let's check. Okay, let's check our console output if there are any errors. Okay, yes, JSON pass error is there. Cannot deserialize local date time. Okay, that's a problem with this local date time class. So to fix this, we have to add the dependency to our maven pom file. So let's do that, and we have to add this dependency. So I'm going to re-import, and after that we have to add an annotation here also. The annotation is at JSON format, and we need to tell what is the string looks like. So it is y mm dd mm. This is the format we enter here. So let's restart our server. Okay, server is started. Let's check it again. Okay, this time it worked. As you can see, it has returned this entered object. So let's check our database. Okay, as you can see, this is the record we entered. Task is this is test task. Yeah, now it's fine. Create task is fine. Let's move into the next API endpoint. Okay, we already did that here, so let's copy this one and paste it here. Okay, let's restart our server. Okay, server started. Let's check with the Postman. So it is a get request. Okay, actually we don't need this body section, and when I call it, okay, it returns an empty list. That should not happen. Why is that? Okay, I know the thing. Let's go to this application properties, and here we need to say update now. Otherwise it will recreate our database every time we run our server. Okay, let's restart our server. Okay, so we started. First of all, let's add our record again. Okay, I'm going to call this create task API endpoint. Okay, it returns successfully, and then I'm going to call this get request. It should return the same. Okay, it returned that one. Now it's also okay. Okay, let's move into the next API endpoint. It is delete task. Okay, let's see, task repository delete by ID. So we have ID here, and we can call it, and then we need to get all the records again, and then we can return them. Okay, that's fine, and let's restart our server. Okay, let's go to the Postman, and this should be a delete request, and this we need to pass this ID. Here ID is 1, so let's pass it. Okay, now it returns an empty arrow because it had only one record. Now we have deleted it, so it's an empty array. Okay, let's move into the another one, update task. Okay, here what we should do is wait. I have missed something here. This should have a request body. I'm sorry, there was error, so I fix it now. This should have a request body also, because we need data to update. apart from this id. Okay, what we should do is we need to query the existing object by this id, and we need to copy properties from task object to that queried object, and we can save it then. So let's do that. Task repository find by id. So now this will return an optional object. As you can see, it returns java.util.optional object. So we can use map function here. So dot map, and this map will give us the object returned by the database. Let's call it obj, and then we can write a function here with that object. So what we should do is we should copy this properties from this task object to this obj object. So let's do that. Obj.set task.get task, obj.set done, task.is done, obj.set created that, task.get created that. Okay, we don't need to update the id because it is the same value. And then what we need to do is we need to return we need to save this object now. Save obj, then we can return all the entries. We can return it. Okay, now it's good. So if there is object associated with this id, this code will execute. Otherwise this empty list will return. So that's okay. Now let's try this. Okay, the service is started. To try this we don't have an object, so let's insert one first. Row. Luckily we have previously entered values, so let's okay, we have this object now. Id is 2, and we can call update now. So it's a put request type, and body, let's change this body. Updated task done is true, and 12:30. Okay, let's send it. Method not allowed. Why is that? Put mapping. We have the put mapping here. Sorry, we have to set the id here. Now try. It returned that empty array. Let's check the database. Database is updated. Why that thing returned empty array? Okay, and there is a logical error with this function implementation. This thing is wrong. This doesn't return from our function, but it returns from this map function only. So this what I did here is wrong. This one is wrong. What I need to return is the returned object from this save function, and this returned object we can ignore it. We don't need it. What we need to do is we need to get all the objects from here. Task repository find all. And now that should be okay. Let's restart our server. Okay, service is started. Let's check our data. Let's call this get function. Okay, it has previously updated data, so let's update it again. We have a put request and ID is 2, so we should have a body. Let's change this test task done false. This is 12:30 11:30. Okay, we have this updated object here. Okay, now all the functionalities are implemented, so I think you will be able to learn something from this tutorial series. I will add another video if I find something to add. Otherwise this API implementation is completed. Okay, thank you.